Okay, guys, I'm ready if you are.
CL, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, when Garrison first got to campus, I remember, your first press conference, you said that, not specifically to him, but the whole group, if you pieced together all of your big men, you still wouldn't have a big man. So I was wondering in these 4 years, what areas do you feel like he grew most in to become, the contributor he is now?
Oh my gosh! First of all, I think he's definitely a frontline player. His second team All ACC last year, and he should get a great deal of credit because that was a lot of sweat, a lot of sweat, a lot of hours in the gym working on his game, a lot of hours in the weight room working on his body. I think he's been an incredible player for us. The ball hadn't gone in the basket as much this year as he wants or I won't, but I guess he was the defensive player of the year for us twice. All ACC last year, second team. So he's really had a big time career, and yet he's also been a fantastic leader for us. And it's just unfortunate that the ball hadn't rolled over the rim and gone in as much this year as it did last year. And I'm hopeful that that'll change in the next 5 weeks.
Luke?
Roy, the Naismith Trophy semifinalists came out today, and the ACC didn't have a finalist for about the first time anyone can remember. There's Player of the Year candidates who transferred from Radford and Wofford. This is a league that's prided itself over the years on star power. It doesn't seem to be as much this year. Is that a cyclical thing or a pandemic thing or something else going on there, do you think?
Well, I think several things, Luke. I don't even know how many finalists are there, 5, 10, or what is?
There's 10 semifinalists.
10 semifinalists. I haven't seen it, so it's one of those kind of things you probably shouldn't make too many comments about something unless you've seen it and got some information. But I think a lot this year, people start talking early about the ACC is down. And whether or not it is or not, that's more or less the accepted conclusion. And I think that that's what they've talked about a great deal all year. I've had other coaches say something to me about it. And my problem is I don't spend a lot of time reading newspapers. And you guys know I don't even know how to bring up certain articles. So I don't read those. But the information I get is during the course of the telecast because I do watch games, particularly of teams that we're getting ready to play, and I hear those comments. But that's a surprise to me. I think we've got some really good players in our league, but it's also when you start thinking about comparing. I mean, when you go from the Zion Williamson zone down, I mean, it's been such a great league for such a long time. I would think perhaps it's just something, an abnormality is what I would think, but I'd have to look into it, Luke, and get more information before I said anything other than that. But I still think there's a lot of those teams that they don't want to come and play in this league.
Brendan?
Hey, Coach. Mark Williams over at Duke has been getting a lot more playing time for them of late. He's basically setting new career highs in minutes every single game. Just wondering, that wasn't the case the first matchup. How does his emergence sort of change the way you've got to try and defend them overall?
Well, I think it's made him a great deal stronger because, and nothing against the Johnson kid that left by any means, but this kid protects the rim. You don't get any easy baskets, and that's way that you can get some or could get some earlier against you because you could score in the lane area. And all of a sudden now you don't score in the lane area. And I watched last night a little bit of their game against Louisville from last Saturday, I guess it was. And the Williams kid for Louisville, the 7-footer, turns and makes a jump hook that nobody's going to get to. And then all of a sudden it was blocked. And so I think that's the first thing, is that he just changes their defense immensely. And it's when we played them, if it was the Johnson kid was in there, we were going to go strong to the rim and focus on the target and not worry about where he was. With the Williams kid, you got to be concerned about where he is. And in one of the last games, I saw a stat sheet where he's 9 for 9 from the floor. So even though Johnson was a double-figure scorer for them and a big-time player, this kid's doing that and blocking everybody's shots on the other end. So I think they're much stronger as a whole team right now with him playing more minutes. But I don't evaluate their team nearly as well as Mike does, so I'll leave that up to him.
Josh Graham.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about Wes Miller. There was a list last year that came out during the summer that had him as the #1 coach under the age of 40, and he just won the SoCon for the 3rd time in the last 5 years. He's mentioned to me a few times that you had an understanding he wanted to be a coach, even dating back to when he was a player. What have you made of the job he's done in Greensboro the last decade?
Well, I think he's been fantastic. I'd like to know how much under 40 the kid is, so I'm having to go through my addition, the numbers of years and everything to see, but I love him to death. He's got some things that I haven't said about other people. One, he got more out of his potential, came closer to reaching his potential than any player I've ever coached. You know, he wasn't a great ball handler. He didn't have great passing ability, but he could shoot the ball and he's tough as nails, and that's where he made his living. And he played as maximum, close to his potential as maximum of anybody I've ever seen. And in my lifetime as a coach, he did a better job of that than anybody. Now, when you put into that, the first conversation we ever had, I'm trying to see if he's interested in transferring here. And I said, what do you want to be doing 10 or 15 years from now? And he said, I want to be a coach. And I said, well, you should come here then. And because thinking that if that's what he wanted to do, I would try to be sharing things with him his entire time here and his entire time afterwards. And that I thought it would be a good situation for him. And it worked out great for us. He was part of some really, really good teams. One year, about halfway through the season, I changed the starting lineup and put him in to get somebody to make more jump shots. And our team got a heck of a lot better. When I'm talking to my team about toughness, I talk about the 3 best charges I've ever had guys take. And one of them was Wes Miller at Arizona. And so he's got the toughness. He had toughness to make shots in games. He's a very bright young man. He's very organized. We talk a lot together now. We talked, I guess, earlier this week or the end of last week. I guess it was Friday night when he was on the bus going up to East Tennessee State. But he thinks the game very well. He's just done a great, great job. He truly is going to be he's already a big-time coach, but he's going to be a big-time coach at a much bigger program one of these days.
Adam Smith.
Hey, Roy, you've mentioned before discipline points, like in practice when we've talked about turnovers and things like that. I'm just wondering what that entails. Is that just running, or is that any other form of punishment? And also just, throughout the season, have you or Coach Robinson or Hubert or anybody, have you guys tried anything different to try to work on the turnover issues? I mean, anything in that regard?
I brought a shovel into practice one day and told them I was going to hit them over the head with the shovel, and they didn't laugh, so I took it back and put it back in the car. But no, guys, I mean, there's only so many things you can do, and I do call it discipline, not punishment. If you turn it over, then you've got to pay the consequences. If you don't want to pay the consequences, stop turning the daggum ball over. We had one game where somebody turned it over, I took them out. The next guy turned it over, I took him out. I mean, it's Coach Smith used to always say turnovers are a result of selfishness or carelessness. And I can put almost 100% of the turnovers into one of those categories. So you got to take care of that. It's been the most frustrating part of this season with me is not getting a better handle on turnovers and stop turning the ball over. At some point, and I've had crazy conversations, when you put your hand on the stove, it burns you, you stop putting your hand on the stove. Well, we've turned it over so many times we've gotten burned, but we haven't changed yet. And so whatever I've been doing, it has not been working. So maybe I should have kept the shovel out by the court or something, but whatever I'm doing so far is not working.
Ross Martin.
So you really did bring a shovel then? I didn't know if you were just playing about that.
You guys think I would ever play with you guys? God almighty. No, I did not bring a shovel. I've told them a lot of other different things that in today's world you cannot say. So you guys don't have to know every daggum thing I do.
Ross Martin.
Hey, Coach. I mean, Saturday is senior night, and I was wondering, Andrew Platek and Garrison Brooks, and I guess the other KJ Smith, Walker Miller, have you had discussions with any of them about using the extra year of eligibility? Is there any news on anybody that may come back or whether they're going to be honored and go on their way into the rest of their careers?
I have not had a single conversation. I think the time for that is when the season's over with, but I have not had a single conversation with any of those guys about what their plans are.
And a quick follow-up on Andrew Playtech. You spoke about Garrison Brooks. I was wondering if you could explain what Playtech has meant to the program and over the course of his 4 years at Carolina.
You know, Andrew, I saw him play down in the Peach Jam, and I've always said, nowadays people think you should make the same decisions by watching tape. I just got off a phone call a few moments ago about, well, you've been able to recruit. Everybody still recruit. You can watch kids on tape, which is the most ridiculous assumption anybody in basketball could ever make. Because if that had been the case, I would never have offered Andrew Playtech. What I saw was ability to make shots that you can see that on tape, but you can't see the toughness. You can't see the other characteristics. I like to watch a guy when the coach takes him out and he comes over to the sideline. Does he throw the towel down and kick a chair over, or does he stop and talk to the coach, and does he cheer for other people? But Andrew fit every category. He had the toughness. He had the ability to make shots. He was a team player. He was a very good student. He wanted to try to play at the highest level that he could. And I've been very happy to say that I was able to coach Andrew. And yeah, I wanted to make more shots and do all those things, but so does he. But he's been a joy to coach, a joy to be around.
Andrew Jones.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if you even own a shovel.
Yeah, I own a shovel. I own a pick. Used to own a chainsaw. I used to be able to change my own oil, and now you have to open the hood so you can see if there's a dipstick in there. And I said dipstick is what I said. But nowadays, almost no one can do work on their car.
You got me on some of that stuff. Since the first Duke game, Caleb had a huge night. But since then, he hasn't shot a high percentage from the field. I think he's only scored 42 points. What has been maybe an issue with him as far as that goes? And also, is there something that you've seen in him grow since then that the media and fans have not seen?
You know, he wasn't scoring a great percentage even before that game. So it really hasn't changed except that game. So I'd like to have another one of those games on Saturday. There's no question about that. I think he was 4 for 5 from 3-point line, and that's by far the best percentage that he's had. I see things that he's improving on every day in practice, coming down and seeing the court and finding other people. He was a scoring guard, a volume shooter in high school, and he had to score a lot of points so they didn't have a chance to win. But if you want to be a point guard, you got to be able to make your own plays and make plays for other people. And that's where I've seen him grow the most, making bounce passes, feeding the post inside, or coming down the court and seeing the whole court and seeing that Kerwin's on the other side and you need to get the ball to him over there. So I've seen improvement there, and I don't have the breakdown in front of me and some stats I look at, but I would bet that Caleb's stats are probably similar, but perhaps a little better in league play than they were in prior to that. And that's hard to do because the competition is so much better. So I see him getting better, but we just got to continue to push because we need him to get better at a quicker rate.
Kip Coons.
Yeah, hi, Roy. I've been pleased to cover Carolina Duke rivalry for 45 years now.
Wow.
And honestly, I cannot remember a time when there was not a number one seed or a conference regular season championship or something major at stake. And right now it seems like the biggest prize is, besides bragging rights, is exchanging a spot on the NCAA bubble. How does that affect this rivalry Saturday? And does it diminish it at all, or it certainly changes it?
Well, it changes it, I think, Kip, from the outside. I don't think it changes inside at all. It is Duke, North Carolina. The rivalry is there regardless. People say that the games always live up to the hype, and I don't think any of them live up to the hype if we lose. So it depends on what you're looking for. But no, it's different. There's no question about that. I can't remember. I know in 2010, we weren't very good. They won the national championship. But last year, we weren't very good again and had everybody hurt. Every time I'd come to practice, I'd have to spend time erasing names off the practice plan because I thought somebody was going to practice and they were not. But this is unusual, but I don't think it, from my viewpoint, I don't know that it makes any difference at all between the two teams or the two coaches. It's still Duke versus North Carolina, an ACC game into the regular season. And for me, we're just going to try to play as well as we can play and see what's going to happen on next week, or I guess this week when we find out where everybody's placed in the ACC tournament, and then play your tail off and see what happens after that.
Got time for two last questions. Mitchell Northam, then CL. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, Coach. You had some fans in the Smith Center for your game against Florida State, but the Duke game is different because of the rivalry. How do you think the team will appreciate having fans in the building for this game to cap off the regular season, considering everything y'all have been through this year with COVID?
I think the players really appreciated the group that was here last weekend. I don't know that they can have any greater appreciation for this because we're going to bring the same number in. I don't know that they can have a greater appreciation for them coming against Duke. The crowd was sensational. They were in it. They were in it the whole game. They were important to us at the end. So I'm hopeful that they'll be that same way. And, you know, it's the game is a big game. It's Duke, North Carolina. And I think that we want the fans to come in. I think the student sections, this where I looked up there a couple of times, and my wife told me about after the game, we need them to stay a little more separated and try to follow the rules and keep their mask on it so they can help each other and what they're doing before and after the game when they gather. We don't want anybody having any problems with the virus by the way they act during the game or after the game. But our fans last Saturday were sensational, and I would expect that they would try to do the same thing this weekend. And I think that the coaches and the players would really appreciate everything they've already done and will continue to do.
Last question, CL, go ahead.
Roy, I wanted to go back to, the summer coaches calls that you guys had weekly. How do you feel like those calls helped make dealing with the challenges of the pandemic and the protocols and everything? How did that kind of make it better for the league and going into the season?
You know, CL, I don't know that I get that specific. I think the phone calls were really good, that we voiced our opinions on the way we wanted to do things. We voiced our information that we're getting from our medical people. I think we understood each other even more often. We had more phone conversations last week than we've had in our last summer. Spring, summer, and fall, they started pretty early and lasted pretty late. I think I was on more phone calls with the coaches than I have in my first 17 years here put together. And so I think we got to know each other a little bit better and guys' opinions on different things. We were all in it together, regardless of what the conversation might have started. At the end, we thought what was best for the league, and that's what we went with. So I think it was great for us, but you know, COVID-19, there's no blueprint. Nobody had any idea what the heck we were going to face. I think if you had told all the coaches you were going to play as many games as we played, I think they would have been surprised that we've been able to play as many as we have. And different guys have played more games, but it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge in my mind since July 6th when our players came back on campus. I was scared to death. So it's been a challenge all year long, and it is still a challenge when we're talking right now about what's going to happen next week at the ACC tournament and who's going to the NCAAs and who's not. And I mean, it's just been, you know, everybody was happy to see 2021 leave. And I think that I'd be happy to get closer back to a regular basketball season. And I'll be glad when 2021 and all the junk that we had to go through, I'd be really ecstatic to be able to get back to a little more normal season than we've had this year.